1972, George Carlin released his Grammy-winning comedy album FM and AM. Divided into one part straight-laced, suit-wearing, family-friendly jokes and another more blue side, the record announced Carlin's transition to a long-haired, foul-mouthed voice of the counterculture. Yeah, he was the voice of the narrator on Thomas the Tank Engine, but for the most part, Carlin remained the grumpy, wisecracking stand-up for his whole career. His last album, It's Bad For Ya, is him still swearing, working, and getting laughs. Our lawyers told us we couldn't indulge in Carlin's real drugs of choice, so grab some Miller High Life and let's pretend we're in a smoke-filled room in 1972. It's time for episode 9 of Toasting the Classics, the stand-up comedy of George Carlin.
Welcome everybody to this episode of Toasting the Classic. If it sounds funny, it's because things are funny. We are making this episode via Zoom.
Slightly late. We're celebrating the 1-year anniversary of COVID by doing a
Right.
Zoom podcast episode.
Right. We're pretending we're locked inside our houses again. We've done nothing but Uber Eats for the past week, eschewed all contact with our families, which has been a good thing. No, I'm just joking. All that I said was BS.
No, I've had a ton of contact with my family. I have no lack of contact with my family.
Especially the kids.
Whatsoever. Ordered 30 tacos from Taco Bell a couple of days ago. I've been subsisting off that. Yeah, we got Uber Eats, 30 tacos, been subsisting on that for like 3 days. That's actually true.
I got to admit, I would hate to smell the inside of your house right now.
Yeah. Well,
especially your son's room.
Speaking of the inside of my house, we have, if you hear any drilling, it's because we're having a bathroom remodeled. And
that's right. They actually blew up the bathroom with 30 tacos and they have to have it remodeled. So
right. It was that bad.
That's what's going on. No, it's my fault. This is grading season at the U, so I've got to get final grades in, and I just really didn't have the time to kind of set up in our studio and everything. So Dave is being very generous and
very, very generous.
Very generous, and we'll demand payback eventually.
So what are we doing today?
So today we are doing. This is my pick. This is my freeform pick, and we are doing George Carlin's 1972 Grammy Award winning album called FM and AM. It was his second stand-up album, and it represents kind of a bookend. We're also going to talk about his last stand-up album, which is called It's Bad For Ya, YA, Bad For Ya, and he released that in 2008, or he recorded it in 2008, died about a few months after recording it.
It's not often that you can do stand-up albums separated by 40 years.
Right.
Not many people have that kind of longevity in terms of stand-up. There's people who were stand-ups 40 years ago. They're working, they're actors now or whatever, but there's not a lot of people that stayed in the stand-up game all that long. That's right. Impressive to me. And, we talked about this a little bit when we did Blazing Saddles. Uh-huh. So my question is, when something is this old, can it be funny? What happens to something after 40 or 50 years? Like, how often are you going to laugh? Is it, and I feel like, it hits you a little flatly. I feel, when it's this old, but I'm wondering, is it like, because we know it so well, because it gets built into sort of the DNA of comedy today. And so we don't really laugh at it anymore. Or is it just, we don't have the cultural context, or do people get funnier over time? Are comedians today just so much funnier? I have a feeling in sports, the guys from 1972, if they played against the guys from today, would get destroyed.
Oh, that's
almost any sport.
That's like a long-standing argument, right? Like, who's better, LeBron James or Michael Jordan, right? And they play in separate leagues. They play in separate times, right?
Right.
Muhammad Ali or whatever heavyweight today. I mean,
I'm pretty
Tyson,
sure.
Right? Uh-huh.
I'm pretty sure the heavyweight champion from today, and I don't even know who that is anymore. It's not as prominent in the cultural consciousness. I don't think boxing.
Right.
I'm pretty sure whoever the heavyweight champion today would flatten Muhammad Ali in the first round.
Yeah, for sure.
Those guys are way bigger. There's way more study of the sport. I just don't think it's. I mean, Muhammad Ali, did he even really weightlift?
I'm sure he did.
Nothing like the guys do today.
Well, they don't have the training regimen that they do today, right? I mean, they just don't have
diet,
all that other stuff. Michael Jordan famously would go on these benders. I mean, he would go to Vegas after a game, drink all night, come back. I think he did that during the playoffs one year. If you during that Michael Jordan documentary, they showed that like he'd be smoking cigars and drinking all the time and gambling because they love to gamble. And he'd come back and play. They would never let him do that today. Today, they'd probably go directly from the game to a hyperbolic chamber, from there to one of those sensory deprivation, water tanks, to a sauna. And they have all this, they'll have their food all
hyperbolic chamber. Is that one where you're like, wow, it's really, really low pressure in here.
Yeah.
High pressure in here. Yeah, it's so I'm thinking with George Carlin.
Hyperbaric chamber. I did say hyperbolic, didn't I?
You did say hyperbolic.
Like
it's okay. I did my job of taking the piss out of you when you said
no,
that.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
George Carlin, for instance, to me, comedies, it's not so much that the guys today are better. Obviously, they're not. There's no new training regimen for making you a comic, although I guess there's more media. So there's a separate argument. Put that aside. A lot of what's funny when you're listening to this album, FM and AM, I'm talking about first. What's it actually called? It's called FM AM or FM and AM? Anyway, I'm quoting. A lot of what's funny about it is that nobody had heard this kind of talk before. This was like the boomer generation suddenly having a voice. At the same time, I mean, he's a little older than your average boomer, but I think he's pretty appropriately a boomer, right? Does that sound about right? And
no, I think he's well before it.
I think he's born in the 30s, which I think is the early end of the
he's
boomers.
Born in 37. I think they call it.
So he's
well before.
He'd be sort of an elder. He'd be an elder statesman of the boomer generation anyway, like sort of maybe even something before it. The point is, like, this is a guy. It's the first generation of people that sort of took in TV and radio their whole lives and could just riff on it, and that's what's going on a lot in what he's doing. And he's like using foul language, which had never been done before. At least not that people were actually listening to. Clearly, in the clubs in New York. That's something. Did you know George Carlin was with Lenny Bruce when Lenny Bruce was arrested?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
He went off in the car with him. I thought that was speaking of somebody that said a lot of bad words, and that was in the 50s. So that's probably about as early as it could be. He's probably still funny.
Well, he was, he was always, Carlin was, I didn't know a lot about him before we started this. I mean, I'm glad we did this because I got to learn a lot more about him. I knew him from Dogma, which is a great movie. I knew him from, a lot of his later stand-up specials, I think from probably the late 90s and early 2000s. So it's not that I didn't know, I thought I knew what to expect. And then I listened to this one, and there's a really obscure analogy here. And it comes from critical theory, but it's you are not okay. You've been to the Grand Canyon, right? You guys went there with your family. Okay.
Yes. Many times. Yeah.
Had you
one of my favorite places on earth.
Okay. Had you ever seen the Grand Canyon before you went to the Grand Canyon?
Sure.
And where did you see it?
Oh, lots of different. I mean, I think I had a Viewmaster with the Grand Canyon in it when I was a little kid.
Movies, pictures, TV shows, movies, stuff like that. The theory goes you actually were not able to see the Grand Canyon when you went there to see it. What you were doing is you're seeing this kind of abstract thing called the Grand Canyon. So you're not actually seeing this canyon in the ground. You're seeing what everybody else has talked about it. They all said it. It's actually kind of like what I talked about when we talked about tasting notes. And I said, if I say it tastes like vanilla, then you're going to say, oh, it tastes like vanilla, right? Like the suggestion. And so that's kind of what happened with this experience. I mean, I was thinking of George Carlin circa 2000, right? And I listened to it, and it's completely different. Not at all what I expected.
Right.
I mean, he's doing weird disc jockey, funky noises and all kinds of crazy, a lot of straight laced stuff. I mean, half of it was supposed to be straight laced.
Well, yeah, that's the shtick of the album, right? Is that half is the straight laced, guy on Johnny Carson, the other half is the blue guy that works in the comedy club.
Right, exactly. And so I went into it thinking that. So it was hard for me really to judge this first album. That aside, if you look at what happened before this, I didn't realize that he was a completely straight-laced comedian. Like you said, he actually hosted The Tonight Show. He was a guest host of The Tonight Show with short hair, no beard, suit and tie and everything, and a very kind of one-liner or punchline type of.
Yeah, when would that have been? Was that like in the Jack Part?
Yeah, that was in the 60s. Yeah, definitely in the 60s and early 60s, because I think he's been a comedian since the 50s, right? I mean, the guy was born in 37.
Sounded like it.
He was in his 20s when he kind of started. So, but this album supposedly represents his transition from that straight lace to what they labeled counterculture performer, for lack of a better term. So he became kind of this, talk about drugs and birth control and all these kind of taboo topics that today we don't really give a crap about, but back then it was.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying about that's what I was saying about the cultural moment of the comedy, is that a lot of what's funny about it is it's like, oh my God, he's talking about birth control.
Right.
And now it's like
What
George
about it?
Carlin would probably go white in the face if he heard like, Amy Schumer talking. I mean, there's just the way comedians talk today, especially if they're like on the edge of what's acceptable for stand-up comic, is just off the charts. The things that people will talk about. It's not even that nothing is off limits. It's that you try to find the thing that's going to upset people the most to tell a joke about it. So the boundary of acceptability has moved a great deal. And so this kind of hits as being, not that scandalous, obviously.
Lame.
Yeah. A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a bit, cringy. Some of that, listening to that first one was a bit cringy at times. But
what got you?
The DJ radio stuff was
goes on for a really long time.
It goes on for a really long time. So
yeah.
he actually was a DJ. I didn't realize this. So he was a DJ after he was discharged from the Air Force. He was a DJ
somewhere weird, wasn't it? Somewhere way out.
Somewhere in Texas.
Fort Worth.
Yeah,
Fort Worth. That's what it was.
Somewhere weird. Okay, that's.
Well, I mean, as in not.
We have one listener in Fort Worth, by the way. We have one.
Oh, okay. Right.
So we apologize to you, Bubba. Anyway,
George Carlin seems like a New York guy. New York guy, but definitely seems like a New York guy. I was surprised that his first media job was in Fort Worth, Texas. That's not. Yeah. It's hard to imagine George Carlin living in Fort Worth, Texas, especially especially in the 50s.
Well, I mean, he was trying to play the game, and the game was straight lace, right? Back at the time. So he had a narrow tie and everything else. And I would imagine it's probably easier to break into radio in Fort Worth than it is in Manhattan, which is where he lived.
Of course.
Because people there were personalities. So, he worked.
So what do you think about this idea? Do you think that the straight-laced comedy holds up better than the blue stuff? Because to me, I almost think it does. Like I play Bill Cosby records. I mean, clearly problematic, should be canceled, has been canceled. But the fact is, the old albums are funny, and I played them for my kids, and they're laughing. They enjoyed the Bill Cosby material from the 50s, because it's
Noah. I think Noah was one of his bits.
Oh, there's just a whole bunch of stuff. There's the one about when he gets his appendix out, and there's a bunch of old stuff, and it's just
making all kinds of noises.
Yeah, I don't know why my computer thinks I want like a big noise to come out of my computer every once in a while. I'm actually turning off the speaker on it. I'm not even using the computer, so why have it? But yeah, I found that stuff held up pretty well. And actually, I grew up listening to George Carlin, the old albums, because my dad had a big collection of vinyl comedy albums. He had Newhart and George Carlin and the Smothers Brothers, Bill Cosby, like all that stuff. And I loved it when I was a kid. I used to listen to it all. For me, it held up. I thought it was funny. I remember listening to Bob Newhart talk about King Kong climbing the building. Yeah. I thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever heard.
Newhart was funny. Newhart was legitimately funny. But you're right. I mean, the problem is that the definition of blue changes. Straight lace is kind of a constant, because there's one-liners and you set them up, and then you hit the punchline, and if you do it right, they're funny. And comedians still do that. I mean, they're not a lot, but there are still comedians that do punchline, one-liner jokes and stuff like that. One of my favorite comedians ever is Stephen Wright, who just sits there.
Oh, I used to love him.
He deadpans and drops stuff just left and right. It's just so
absolutely.
Funny. And he's not blue. He's not blue at all. And not
every once in a while, he'll drop an F-bomb or something, but usually no. What's funny is that he's very he's just really flat. That voice.
Deadpan.
Did you pick up on him being in Reservoir Dogs?
No. Wait, who? Steve Wright?
Stephen Wright.
He was a DJ. Yeah, he was a DJ.
He's the DJ on Super Sounds of the 70s.
Yeah.
And now so it's like all those.
And now another hit from a band that came.
Big Daddy Don's truck, the Behemoth.
Yeah, the Behemoth. Right. Yeah, that's that. I love that.
He's good on that. He's really funny. He was one of my favorite comedians back in the day, because I think he was sort of almost like my favorite guys today are all the alt comedy guys. And Stephen Wright was sort of proto alt comedy before they used that term, because he was very smart. He was a lot like Newhart, just really sharp and like smart comedy, a lot of verbal comedy, which is my favorite thing.
Right. Yeah. A lot of play on words, which I really
definitely. I mean, I could listen to somebody make good play on words jokes, just sit there and listen to it all day. And Carlin wasn't doing a lot of that.
He wasn't. No, he was doing a lot of, and before, from what I read about us, and I didn't go back and look at his early routines, but a lot of he did like kind of physical comedy type of madcap comedy, like the part of the DJ where he's doing like the morning circus type of DJ stuff.
Right. It's just kind of zany voices.
Zany,
and stuff
right?
like that.
Yeah.
And it just goes on for a long time. And like, really, it wasn't hitting with me.
Right.
The zany voices were not doing it for me.
Right.
I remember the bit he did about, and this is one thing, I mean, this is at the top of my list here. I wrote, how are we supposed to talk about George Carlin without using bad words?
Profanity.
Because he's got the 7 words you can't say on television.
Right.
And he's got the one bit about your dish.
Mm-hmm.
Like you got to move your dish here, and you got to move your dish there, and there's all your dish, and that's funny. Right. That's a funny bit. I used to love that one. That's not on this record though.
Right.
He touches on it. He does talk about it. He does a bit that's about that, very similar to that, maybe like what it comes from. But it's not that bit, and it's not the baseball versus football bit, which always offended me, but it was a funny bit.
It was a funny bit. That is a funny bit.
It's a funny bit, but as a baseball man, it used to rankle. But you got to give people credit when they're funny. So
right.
That doesn't really matter. Did you hear anything on this, especially the blue half of FMAM? Was there anything that you think would be canceled?
No, not on the blue half. I mean, the blue half, it was blue not just because of language, because he did he drop any F-bombs? I don't think he did. I think he had a discussion of
I don't think so. Maybe. I'm not sure.
But I think it was more topical. So it was about birth control. He was talking about drug use and drugs.
So just because of the vintage of this, I had an ear out for it. And he does 2 times, he does that gay voice that comedians used to do. You remember he does like the really effeminate, like lisping gay voice. Not even really talking about, I do remember talking about anything.
What was the context that he did it?
I can't remember what the context was, but I heard it and I was like, okay, that's something that sounds 50 years old.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do that today. That's wouldn't be funny today. And just,
Yeah.
And it reminded me, have you ever seen Freddie Prinze?
Freddie Prinze. Yeah.
So he was huge, like around this time, like in the early 70s. And I had never seen his stuff. I'd heard the show Chico and the Man referred to, and I knew Freddie Prinze Jr., obviously, who was more of like our time.
Right.
But I put up a YouTube video of Freddie Prinze, and it is just half an hour of a guy making fun of like every different race, making fun of gay people, doing voices and accents for everybody. And you're just like, wow, like maybe because he's Latin, he could get away with it even today, but probably not even then. Like it was really cringe inducing. It was like, I can't believe this people were just dying. They thought he was the funniest thing they'd ever seen, but that was,
but I mean, Eddie Murphy Raw, he had the whole bit about police in San Francisco, and he did the woo, 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 riding on top of the car and stuff like that.
A lot of those older comedians have been canceled though. Those guys that do some of those guys that do that stuff. I don't think even like
Eddie Murphy just dropped out. I mean, he just stopped doing it. So
right. But like Kevin Hart's gotten in trouble for stuff like that. Dave Chappelle's gotten in trouble for stuff like that. I can't remember what it was he was talking about. We saw him and he was talking about trans people and making fun of them, and that was a problem.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting that you use it that way, that they say they've gotten in trouble with it. People have complained about it, but I don't think Dave Chappelle certainly doesn't give a crap what people think.
Dave Chappelle does not care. Dave Chappelle has established his bona fides as being outside the system and not caring.
He will say whatever he wants. Kevin Hart is sort of the same way. I mean, Kevin Hart, the whole thing. A little bit. Well, Kevin Hart's got a big film career. That was stupid because he had come out, and I mean, before like that whole tweet scandal, he came out afterwards and looked back and said, I can't believe I said that stuff. I'm embarrassed and I apologize for it. He said that in another tweet, but they essentially skipped right by his apology to nobody in particular. He recognized it himself and said, I shouldn't have done that. I apologize. They skip right by that and go right to the thing that he apologized for, which you got to give him credit. He didn't delete it.
Right.
He knew it was out there. He took ownership of it well before they even brought it up. And
what he did? What was it? Some gay joke or something?
Yeah, it was. That's exactly what it was. It was some stupid gay joke that he made when he was young and dumb, and of course they can't live by an apology. That again, he was introspective enough to say, to own up before anybody even said anything about it. He said, I can't believe I used to tell these stupid jokes, and I apologize, and I'm so offended for having told.
That's a thing. That's a thing where, and this is not an excuse for it, but that's a thing where the times have definitely changed. People thoughtlessly walked around being homophobic all the time when we were growing up. It just wasn't a thing. It wasn't on the radar as something that should be avoided. And I'm sure if anybody had a recording of some of the things that we said when we were kids, I'd be like, oh my God, like what was the matter with us? Because I never had any, we didn't grow up like hating gay people or anything like that. I didn't feel that way at all, but you would use words that nobody would use today, just thoughtlessly, just with no thought that it was.
We did that.
I remember.
We did that for everything. We did that for everything.
But especially on this, nobody in my group of friends, nobody would have said anything racist. Like we all knew better than that. But I was in college one time, and I was hanging out with a friend who was gay. It was one of the first times I'd ever hung out really with somebody that was openly. I knew they were gay. We were talking about something, and I was like, "Oh, that's so gay," And he like looked at me, and I'm like, "No, you know what I mean? Like it's really lame." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, that's going to be out of my vocabulary now. I don't know why I just said that." But it was just thoughtless. So I didn't even connect the two realities that was referring to a kind of person. It was just a dumb word everybody said. There's that. But then, it's like Kevin Hart. You're just like, yeah, I can't believe we used to say that. I'm not doing that anymore. But, I mean, you can't really cancel people for that because that's just, people were thoughtless about that kind of thing.
They did. I mean, that's the point is they did.
Right. So I think George Carlin doing that voice seems a little more intentional. Right. It seems a little more like it's not like he's not thinking it's related to someone gay. But anyway, you know what it reminded me of?
That gay was part of the counterculture, though, especially in San Francisco in the 70s. It's just a weird conversation, this whole thing. I mean, honestly, we used to make fun of Irish people. I mean, that part in Blazing Saddles. And he starts naming off a list of, inappropriate derogatory terms to say for different, all these racist terms. We'll take these people and these people, but we won't take the Irish, like that. It's like they're the worst.
But that's a joke. That's a joke about old-fashioned racism. That's like in the version of Ghostbusters. The version of Ghostbusters that's all female. It really wasn't a very funny movie, but there was one part at the beginning where they were talking about this old mansion, and the guy was listing the features, and he was like, anti-Irish fence. It's like that's pretty funny, but it's making fun of how ridiculous it was that once upon a time that was what people were racist about, which hopefully you'd think would point out the ridiculousness of people's current racism by being like, you're going to look this dumb.
That's the point of saying. That's the point of saying it. I mean, we that's how stupid racism is,
right? Because
we used to, say no Irish allowed, no Italians allowed, whatever. The whole thing is asinine. I was wondering about that, like if he could get canceled. It's hard for us because, like you said, people like him have pushed the envelope so much that we're at a point now that, well, no, I was about to say that you have to say something really outlandish to be canceled, but you really don't. All you have to do is say something old-fashioned, as you just put it, to be canceled.
Yeah. Well, there's different ways. There's different ways to run afoul of it. I mean, Bill Maher, who, by the way, I'll talk about him later because the later incarnation of George Carlin is so much like Bill Maher. I kept thinking about him, but Bill Maher got canceled for saying bad things about the military after September 11th.
No, he got the thing.
Well, he got fired. He got fired from network.
The thing that got him fired is he said that if you want to talk about somebody with balls and courage, talk about the hijackers. They flew that plane into the building. They flew that plane right into the building and they didn't hesitate. That takes courage. That's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
And people didn't like that at the time because we were still patriotic and cared about our country. But from one perspective, he's got a point.
What he said was 100% true.
Yeah,
You cannot fault terrorists for physical courage.
Right.
They are physically courageous.
That's what
crazy people.
That's what he said, but people didn't like it, and so
yeah, that's right.
It's funny, you could get canceled for that, for saying something against the country back then, but not for saying things against racist or homophobic things. Now you can say whatever you want about the country as long as it's bad, but you can't say anything racist or homophobic. So we've kind of come full circle since 2001, I guess.
Yeah.
In any case.
Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to a podcast. I listened to this podcast about Stephen King. They do all of Stephen King's books. It's called Just King Things. Very, very good podcast in general. Guys are really smart, and they're literature professionals, and they say a lot. But they had one episode recently where they were talking about his nonfiction book, Danse Macabre, and they were faulting him because they couldn't understand why he would be talking about being against the Vietnam War, but then also talk about how bad communism is. And I'm like, well, they're saying that because that's true. The Vietnam War was bad, so is communism. But they found it offensive that he was speaking against communism. And I was like, really? Like, he's talking about the Khmer Rouge. Do you not think that's real? What do you? I didn't really understand. That was annoying me. I don't know. I don't understand this perspective. I don't know what these people are talking about. So, but anyway.
Yeah, that's weird one.
I didn't cancel it. I kept listening to the podcast. It got back to the things I like about the podcast. It was fine. But anyway, you know what? So we were talking about, the DJ bit, right? The DJ Wino or whatever that he does that goes just on and on and on. And you know what it reminded me of? When I was a kid, we used to listen to things and I would play them over and over again to memorize them. Do you remember doing that? Did you ever do that when you were a kid?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like McDonald's did this thing where they listed all of the things on their menu and the guy said it really fast. And we all liked it so much. They were selling records of it at McDonald's and you could listen to the record. And I remember trying to memorize the whole menu of McDonald's.
Well, let's see.
And
can you remember how to make a Big Mac? Was it the Big Mac that was 2 all beef patties, special sauce?
2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. See? So I could imagine a kid sitting at home trying to memorize this DJ Wino thing.
Right.
Because then you could go on the bus and you could do it for your friends. Like people used to do stuff like that. I don't know if kids do that anymore. Probably not. But
well, so that's a good example of something that we've lost the context of, because I was thinking about it. Like radio DJs aren't really a thing anymore. But back in his day, you had a DJ for essentially every little small town in America had like kind of a personality DJ, right? And they would have this kind of DJ banter, and that's what he started out with. And his original partner, Burns, I can't remember his first name. He had a like a comedy partner when he first started. That guy was a DJ as well in the same. Place, and then they took off to Hollywood to be form a team,
right?
But that was like DJing, like that was kind of a thing.
So the other day I had to rent a car, right? And they didn't have a car, so they gave me this old van, and it didn't have any way of like streaming my music. So I was like, man, all right, I guess I'm going to turn on the radio and see if there's still radio. And I was shocked to find there's still a radio station. There are apparently people driving around in 2021 listening to like the FM radio.
Right.
I was kind of blown away, and I was listening, and there's a DJ. The way it works now is it's just like there are these big corporate holding companies for all the radio stations, and most of it's just coming in from far away.
Right.
It's just like centralized. They have a guy here, but it's not like it used to be where the DJ in Cody, Wyoming would have been somebody nobody ever heard anywhere else. It would have been only the people in Cody, Wyoming would know that station.
Right.
That's cool. I kind of that's something I think we've lost. That kind of individuality would have been really neat to listen to. Like I would have been interested in that.
Yeah. So
now they probably would have only played country music in Cody, Wyoming, to be perfectly honest. But I mean, I remember driving across country when I was younger and just flipping through the stations, and you'd be like, oh my God, there's a 500-mile stretch of the country where there's nothing but country radio. Like there's no like rock radio at all anywhere. That was hard to deal with.
That would have been AM. So you should have flipped to FM to hear the more, I guess, cutting.
Oh no, we were always on FM. I never listened to AM radio. AM radio is kind of as being a music platform is before my time. I don't think I ever listened to AM radio for music. Used to be a big part of my life. The radio was a big part of my life.
AM was always sports and news, like news shows.
Right.
Sports.
Right.
Well, let's have a drink. So I'm making Dave. I'm making
what
Dave
you know. My thought for this is that I feel like it should be drugs. Should be the drink for George Carlin.
Cocaine and wine. Cocaine and wine were his two favorite things. I know.
I have no idea what you. I listened to the whole thing. I was like, what would I pick if this was my pick? And I have nothing. Nothing came to mind.
I tried my best to find out what he really drank, and it just said wine. So he went to rehab for alcohol and for drugs many times.
I have a paper bag over here that is not shaped like a wine bottle, so I know that's not what you went with.
So go ahead and take out your treat for the day, and
all right,
let everybody know what it is you have to drink.
Well, it's a bottle. It's a beer bottle.
It's a beer bottle.
Oh my God.
Yeah, good stuff.
Do they still sell this? This isn't what it used to look like.
Yeah, no, this is exactly what it used to look like.
Maybe it went, you know what? But when I was a light beer, this is Miller High Life, by the way, is what I've got in my hand, which is, as we all know, the champagne of beers.
The champagne of beers.
This is not what the bottles look like when I was in college. They've gone back to an older bottle. I think it's a vintage kind of thing.
They tried to do that.
Because I could picture the bottle. It had more red in it. It almost looked like a Johnny Walker label a little bit. Like it was kind of gold and red.
It is twist off, I believe, isn't it?
It should be at this.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, the smell brings back memories.
Is that terrible?
There was this girl I used to hang out with, and she and her roommates. She and her roommates had Miller High Life all the time, and I wouldn't say she necessarily smelled like this, but that smell brings me back.
That is American as American beer gets, huh?
They didn't improve it any or anything over the years.
Thin.
Good Lord! I mean, we have this
thin
renaissance of
water.
Renaissance of micro brewing and beer culture in America over the last 20 years, and this still tastes like
this. So the reason I bought.
I mean, I'm sorry. What I meant to say was thank you for the free beer, Clint.
Hey, anytime, man. I appreciate the appreciation. The reason I bought this, I wanted to find some. To me, George Carlin's always been this blue collar, East Coast, New York, New Jersey kind of guy.
Oh, we should have gone with PBR. Should have gone with PBR then.
No. PBR. Actually, what I wanted was like a Schlitz. I wanted a Schlitz or a Ballantine or Schaefer's. Schaefer's.
I may have something in the pipeline for you.
Oh, really? Well,
I may. Yep.
Schlitz supposedly is supposed to be pretty good, but I actually would have even gone for Coors Banquet beer because that was kind of a counterculture thing in the 70s. Is
that the one from Smokey and the Bandit? What were they? Yeah. What were they?
Yeah, they're trying to get Coors across the Mississippi, and but I couldn't find a 6-pack of it anywhere. The smallest I could find was an 18-pack. And I thought, well, I didn't want to do that to you.
Well, don't worry, I'm not going to drink this whole 6-pack. It's funny. The other thing I associate with drinking this beer is having beer in the afternoon. Like when I was in college, I used to go over. I'd go to class. I'd go over to this girl's house. We'd all hang out on her porch and have some beers, and the sun was still out. And that's what this reminds me of. And here we are, we're recording a podcast in the afternoon, not something we usually do. And I've got a Miller High Life in my hand. So it's all bringing me back to circa 1999.
Very good. Well, this, I used to, I have a connection with this as well. When I was a really broke college student, I had no money at all. So I used to go sell plasma. You get $25 to sell plasma.
Did you sell plasma at the plasma bank that used to be a Pizza Hut?
That's it. Yeah, the Pizza Hut plasma bank. And I'd be right next to some homeless guy, and the two of us didn't have a lot to talk about. He would typically be shaking for some reason, but in any case, I'd be sitting right next to some homeless guy, and we'd be pumping our arms and getting that beer money. And I would get $25, and for $5, I could go to a 6-pack of Miller High Life and like a couple of cheap microwave burritos. And then have a feast, man, because I was broke as could be. But the best thing about it was, if you are light on plasma, it doesn't take a lot to get you drunk, or buzzed at least. Interesting. So you get the lightest, wispiest American, terrible, wussiest beer like Miller High Life, and even that will get you buzzed if you are low on plasma. So.
Here's a question for my here's a question for my historian of spirits and beer.
Yeah.
Americans were famous for having crappy watery beer. Do we have crappy watery beer because of the tradition of prohibition and like counties that allowed only low alcohol beers? Or is it because we have bad taste?
That's a good question and a good observation. The first one, not the second one. Well, actually, it could be both.
The second one wasn't a good observation. You know what? All of my observations are good observations.
Oh, are they?
That one was that was on point, pearls of wisdom.
Well, yeah. So what happened is we supposedly we had really good, regular beer. I mean, we had lagers and ales and everything else in the European tradition up until 1918, 1919. Prohibition hit, and for 13 years, people had really been deprived of beer. They honestly didn't know what it tasted like when Prohibition ended in 33. So we got to drink beer again legally in April of 1933, and it was all that was legalized was 3.2 alcohol beer. So super low ABV beer.
So is that are we reaping the whirlwind of that right now?
Yeah, we really are. That's what
this is for. This is 4 point something. I'm too old to read the small print now. My eyes finally started going for small print. I was very upset. It happened like 3 days ago. I woke up in the morning and I was looking at something, and
that's karma. I think you were making fun of me for using reading glasses not too long ago. So.
Oh yeah. I'm not going to use reading glasses. I'm just not going to be able to read.
You're just going to squint at everything.
Yeah.
And guess at it. Start learning Braille. But yeah, that's what. So this is a result of that. In 1984, I guess it was 1984. Like 90% of all brewing in America was controlled by 4 companies: Miller, Anheuser-Busch, Coors, and maybe Schlitz or Pabst, or I don't know what the other one was. So
what did you say? You said Miller, Busch, Budweiser probably was the other one.
Well, Anheuser-Busch was Budweiser.
Oh, Anheuser-Busch was Budweiser.
Coors, so Miller, Coors, Anheuser-Busch. I can't remember what the third one was, or the fourth one. I'm thinking it was Pabst. It might have been Pabst. Schlitz had kind of imploded in the mid 70s, so they weren't really around anymore. But yeah, so we just had that. We just had cheap, lousy beer until, I want to say Sierra Nevada was one of the first that came out.
That was the first quality beer that I had. So I remember I went to a party one time towards the end of college, and somebody had a keg of Sierra Nevada. Actually, it was a party from some kids that worked in the city who were already working. And I remember thinking like, wow, like we're growing up, like we've got real beer at this party. Like I'm actually going to drink a beer and enjoy the beer. Like we've arrived.
Yeah, that cost
this
money.
Is our time.
That was quite a bit of money, actually.
Yeah, it was probably a $75 keg instead of a $50 one.
Right? I know, right?
But like you said, you have to give your plasma if you want $25 when you're 20 years old.
Yeah, so. That's a lot of money. So this is your blue collar. This is what we would have, if we'd ordered a beer at whatever nightclub he was in for our 1972 album, we would have ordered one of these or something that tasted just like this. So
have you noticed us hovering around the 70s quite a bit with the things we've picked? I was kind of surprised because Gulag Archipelago was in the 70s, right? Patton is 1970. Enter the Dragon is 1974. Yeah. This is 1972.
Right.
And we're really, that's out of 8 episodes, out of 9 episodes, more than half from the 70s. I mean, Catcher in the Rye is older. I forget. Wolfenstein. Okay, Wolfenstein's newer, so that's outside.
That's 81. It's not too much.
Macbeth is 400 years old, so that we're safe on that one.
Marcus Aurelius. Marcus
Aurelius is pretty old. Yeah. That's right. He's more like from the 70s, like no, I guess not. Is it?
70s, was it 60s? Yeah. I think, wasn't it?
180.
Yeah,
much later than that, but close. Anyway, I just thought it was kind of funny because I think I started off talking about the 70s at some point by saying it was a crappy decade, but like here we are, like we're just this ton of cultural wealth from that time.
Well, so we came out of that decade, so I did anyway.
Yeah, well, that hardly argues in favor of the times producing a lot of
producing things like me. Yeah,
exactly.
You know what's funny is on this album, so I was looking at this album and I was like, do I want to do this George Carlin? And then I looked at like, well, what came out in 73? And the Grammy winner for 73 was Richard Pryor. I thought, what about 74? I think 74 was Richard Pryor as well. And I
would have done Richard Pryor. I like Richard Pryor.
Go out and like Wikipedia the Grammy comedy albums and just look at we'll look at the title of Richard Pryor's albums and it would have been difficult to even introduce.
Oh,
So,
are we talking? Is there an N bomb in there or
oh
something?
gosh, yes. Oh yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. No thanks. No thanks.
So I thought, well, but George Carlin, I thought would be fun just to see how much change there was, and man, there was a lot of change. Well, let's talk about that. So let's flash forward to 2008.
Okay.
2008's album, his last album. It's Bad for You. What were your thoughts on that observation?
What are my thoughts on the album? On It's Bad for You? Well,
Yeah,
first of all,
yeah,
I think comedy, not only is it something usually doesn't hold up over time, but I think over the course of someone aging, they usually don't tend to be as funny.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, when you're getting to being in your 70s, it's going to be tough to be funny. I thought he did a pretty good job, though. I thought he held up pretty well. He's a very different perspective than he was when he was younger.
Yeah.
And like I said, he sounded a lot like Bill Maher. He sounded kind of bitter, which was always there a little bit in George Carlin's paradigm, but more so as an older man. There's a lot, like I said, a lot of the same stuff Bill Maher talks about. He's like negative about marriage, negative about children, like negative about literally anything that could be associated with like bourgeois existence. Even the things that you're like, well, there do need to be families. Like we can't like not have children. That's really not.
Well, he said
an extremely nihilist.
He said to have one child. Every couple.
He eventually said that because he does have one child.
Yeah.
He did make a concession that perhaps people should have one child.
Just one.
But otherwise, he was pretty down on it.
He said, "Women replace yourself, and don't worry about the men.
Don't worry about replacing your husband." Right?
Don't worry about
Exactly.
replacing your husband.
I actually went off on a tangent myself. On the albums on Spotify, the parental advisory sticker is really prominent.
Is it?
And I was thinking, like, who designed that? Because it was an industry self-regulating thing, basically, because they were putting pressure on them. Tipper Gore and all these people were putting pressure on them.
Uh-huh.
So they decided to self-regulate, but they put those stickers on, and the sticker is so cool. Even today, I look at it, I'm like, that's a cool looking sticker. They really nailed that. They're like, don't listen to this album, like with a big, awesome looking sticker.
Right.
People made T-shirts out of the sticker. It was so cool looking. And I tried to look up who designed the sticker, couldn't find it anywhere. Other people had Googled it. It was one of the first things that came up on Google, but I got no answer.
That is really.
And I was thinking, why is that not a fact that I can look up? But I mean, it's a pretty cursory Google search. But you know, I didn't really like go to the library or anything. But
I'm sure it's out there somewhere. That's a good point, though. It is a big honking, inviting sticker to see, especially when you're a kid.
Now I really need to listen to this, right? Yeah. Like, who would listen to Two Live Crew if it wasn't for that? Two Live Crew sucks.
They were terrible.
They were bad. They were bad. They were really bad.
But at the time I listened to the hell out of them. You know, a buddy of mine would give me a ride to school. I didn't have a car. He was a year older than me. And he had their album. I didn't have their album. My mom would never allow me to have that in her house, but he had the album, and we listened to it every single day driving to school and back. And
all right,
it's terrible now. I mean, when I listen to it now, I'm like, oh God, that's just terrible.
See, I actually never got my hands on Two Live Crew or NWA when I was a kid. I was actually too young. Nobody had it. And my parents obviously wouldn't buy it for me. So I didn't get to start listening to like parental advisory sticker gangster rap until the mid 90s. So I was in the Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg phase a couple years later.
It's a good phase.
It was very good. It's a very good phase. And NWA holds up. NWA is still really good. But you know, that's neither here nor there about George Carlin. But anyway, that was my swath of culture. Was I didn't get Two Live Crew. And so I only heard it years later when I could from a distance look and say, oh, this sucks. Yeah. This is not good.
It does, but it's a lot like Lenny Bruce and George Carlin in that they were purposely defying what, let's call it the man, Tipper Gore, white, you know, suburban housewife, although she's a multimillionaire.
Clearly something to be said for that. I mean, the difference is Lenny Bruce was funny. You know,
but at the time, well, I mean, rap was not what rap is now in 1989, though. You know, I mean, rap sounded a lot different. So Two Live Crew sounded fresh for the day. Now we listen to it and we're like, ugh, you know, that's terrible.
Yeah.
But that's what rap sounded like at the time. It was not.
I know. It changed. It changed a lot.
And it's gotten better. It's gotten more creative, more artistic. But at the time, it was terrible. And they went out. I mean, you had a rap group called the Fat Boys.
Oh God, yeah,
Fat Boys. I mean, so
can you not hear this drilling and hammering?
I can kind of hear it now. Yeah.
Okay, it's right over my head right now. So if it's bothering people, sorry.
That's the Taco
Anyway.
Bell bathroom.
I don't even know why they'd be drilling over. My bathroom isn't over my head, so I don't know. We don't like. We live in New Mexico. We don't have
Well,
two-story houses in New Mexico. So
yeah, it's probably echoing.
I think so, but it really sounds like it's right over my head right now. So, anyways,
7,000 square foot manor. That's what happens when you have such a big place.
yeah, right,
Sorry.
right. I was told we had a party the other day, and one of the ladies said, "Oh, this doesn't look like a doctor's house," and I was like, "Oh, that doesn't sound like something you should say." Like, what does that even? I'm like, I have kids. I have kids. No, it doesn't. It's not that. Not kids are going to destroy anybody's house. So.
What does a doctor's house look like? I'm a doctor.
I don't know.
My wife's my wife's.
There you go. You guys are both doctors.
Yeah, we have a doctor's house, and it's quite small. I'm the wrong.
Well, that's how I like. Honestly, that's how I like it. I mean, I do live here.
Yeah,
it's not all about ostentation, right?
So
which album did you like better?
I like the second one. I like the newer one. The one
that
I
like the second one better.
Yeah, okay. I mean that's the George Carlin that I know and love, and he's a crotchety, grumpy guy, and I think he has a lot to. I wish he was around now to kind of deliver his sermons about what's going on all over the place, like cancel culture and everything else.
Yeah, you don't want to lose a voice like that. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. It's not good to lose a voice like that too young, because I think he was probably about 70 when he died, so he definitely could have had
70,
more years.
I think he was 71, died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
And and he
that was probably a self-inflicted wound.
Yeah,
right.
Well, probably.
I mean, I believe there was some. I believe there was some damage being done to his cardiovascular system.
Does cocaine affect your heart? I don't think it does.
Oh yeah, it does.
No, I thought it was good for the heart. It gets it pumping really fast.
Oh yeah, it gets it pumping really fast. Yeah,
yeah.
Actually, what happens to
being
people?
On a treadmill.
What happens to people is kidney failure when they have an overdose of cocaine.
Really?
I don't even know how that works or why that happens, but I've heard of that happening.
Sure, you don't. Okay, I've heard.
No,
of that.
It's
I like
people.
That.
People I personally know who had trouble with that. It's not just something from TV. It is personal experience, not
see me
personal experience.
Right. I'm winking at him. Okay. Anyway, he's just funny. I mean, he's just funny. As far as would he be canceled today? So that album came out 2008.
Right.
We were still kind of in the PC,
kind of in the infancy of that. Like, yeah.
Well, yeah, the politically correct is what we called it back then.
So I think that the way the country,
I don't think he really cared. But here's the thing. I mean, he was compassionate to anybody living on the margins, and he was a champion for them. But he he would still joke, and he would tell jokes, and he would. In this album, he picked on anything religious. If you had any kind of religion, and you could potentially be offended at this album, and I mean any religion, because he just goes after it all. And
well, he's anti-religious. Again, same thing as Bill Maher. Well, Bill Maher's gotten himself in trouble a couple of times because he's anti-religious, right? Mm-hmm. And he does not differentiate. He's anti-religious if you're Christian. He's also anti-religious if you're any religion, which includes Islam. Mm-hmm. So he's gotten in trouble a couple of times because people on the left, they're happy that you're making fun of Christians.
Yeah.
But then if you extend that to Muslims, then all of a sudden you're racist, and therefore they're not sure where to go with that. They don't know which of their things is more important. So
there was a great episode of Politically Incorrect with Ben Affleck was on it.
I think is the one I'm talking about.
Yeah,
because I think Ben Affleck was saying what I'm putting liberals in the shoes of Ben Affleck, who was calling him racist.
Yeah, because they had a professor on, and who had written a book about like radical Muslimism. Is it radical Muslimism? Radical Muslim?
Islam.
Whatever. Islam.
Radical Islam. Muslim is a person.
Islam is
right. And then Islamic is something that refers to the culture.
Okay, so radical Islam.
Muslim or Islam. Right?
I'm
saying it's a radical Muslim
right.
adheres to radical Islam.
Correct. He was having a discussion about that, and Affleck was going, ballistic. Just stop talking. We can't talk about this. Just stop talking. And Maher's like, what's your problem? He's like, can't you see how racist this is? Maher's like, what are you talking about? There are clearly people out there that fit this. No, there aren't. We can't talk about that. And he would not.
Well, the reason for it is that in Bill Maher's case, it's a blanket. He's against religion. Fine. I get that. The reason that Ben Affleck is reacting that way is that a lot of people who talk about radical Islam and Islam in general are racist against Muslims. There's definitely a lot of people who, and it's not even a race, but you know what I mean. Bigoted against, bigoted against anybody from that religion. It's completely foreign cultural context to them, which only exists in the context of terrorism. Because for a lot of Americans, especially in the middle part of the country, the first time they ever heard about Islam is when there was a terrorist attack. Despite it being, by some rights, either the first or second largest religion in the world, and you know, having been a huge part of world history, they have no context for understanding it other than terrorism. Because it wasn't very prominent in most of America until very recently. Were there a lot of people who were Muslims? That's what Ben Affleck's reacting to. I get it, but he's not listening. He's not listening to what Bill Maher's saying.
And I do appreciate the fact that Bill Maher and George Carlin, you know, they can talk about it all rationally. Like, let's be rational about all of it, which is kind of what you're saying. Like, slams Christianity, slams Islam, slams Hinduism.
Right. The problem with being rational, though, is that a lot of people bring to a conversation their emotions and their perspective on what you're talking about, and they're not really listening to your words. I run afoul of that constantly, because I love to talk about things that are, you know, I enjoy talking about things that are maybe a little bit of a third rail sometimes. You know, I don't really have what I consider to be like obnoxious opinions necessarily on those issues, but I like to talk about them. And the fact is, if you're making a subtle point about something like race or bigotry, or I don't know, a lot of different subjects, people are just going to hear what they want to hear. You know, they're going to look at your face, they're going to assume what kind of opinions you have. You know, and it's just, you're going to get lost.
It gets uncomfortable and it gets dangerous sometimes, but I think I don't know, life is more interesting if you can just talk about things and try to understand and so forth. And I think, he, you know, people might call him out on his earlier stuff, and George Carlin would probably give him the finger and just say, whatever, you know, I don't care.
So don't listen, right?
So don't listen.
You don't like it, don't listen. I mean, I think that would be his attitude, because he's coming from a place where having long hair was a rebellion.
Having a beard.
Where people wanted him canceled because he had a beard and long hair. So he's used to it. He doesn't care. And he's been through it before.
I think one of the last things he said, a bit powerful if you think it's one of the last things he said publicly before he died, as this kind of expression of his art form, was when he's talking about rights. You don't have rights in this country. You have privileges. We have a bill of privileges, and you need to think of it that way, because we're, you know, and coming off of what we just came off of, you know, the COVID lockdowns, it's a bit profound to think of it in that context. I mean, he was off almost, in that. But wait.
I may be.
Let me finish. He said, look, we don't have rights in this country. We have privileges. He said, but I believe you either have no rights at all, so you just have privileges, or you have all the right to everything. And it's a really, and that's where he kind of ended it, right? And so it's a really weird binary to end on, that you're either no rights, and it's just, and what he said is a matter of perspective. And he's absolutely right. It is completely about how you look at it.
So I run into, like I said, I like alt comedians. So I like comedians that sometimes touch on intellectual issues. And the problem with this part is that he's trying to be funny. He's trying to be entertaining. He's talking about rights. He's getting into a discussion of rights. And I'm a lawyer, and I'm hearing the things he's saying about rights. And I'm like, oh, none of that is correct. The fact that your right can be abrogated in certain special circumstances does not mean you don't have a right. And also, he's assuming a context where, and this is not my philosophy, I don't believe in natural rights, but a lot of people do. A lot of people believe that there are inalienable natural rights that all human beings have. I think most people, if they were forced into it, would have to admit that that's a religious perspective. And George Carlin is an atheist, pretty obviously. He's pretty committed to that position.
That's his point. That's exactly his point.
He's saying there's no rights because he's an atheist. I think most people actually believe there are human rights that are inalienable, whether or not the government gives them to you or not. They're not really a political question. You have the right to life. You have the right not to be tortured. You have the right to a whole bunch of things. I think it's very difficult to justify those rights in a secular perspective.
Well, not only that, he's saying that, you know, your rights are based on context. I mean, in the U.S., sure, you have a right not to be tortured, but what about in Burma? Or what about, you know, Myanmar, rather?
Well, he makes a very specific point. He's talking about the Japanese internment camps, right? In this thing that he's talking about.
Well, Yeah, he did talk about that in the U.S., but he does say one thing. He says, okay, if you've got the right to freedom of speech, do you have the right to freedom of speech in Kuwait? No, you don't.
No.
I mean, he didn't use Kuwait, but he uses an example of some other country where you don't have those rights. So if these are natural rights, why don't you have them there? Right?
Because, and this is the distinction I'm making, because a lot of people today would believe that a person in Kuwait does have the right to free speech that is being taken from them by their government.
They're being repressed.
They have that right as a right of being a human being. And when Kuwait says you don't have it, then they're having their rights taken away. Would be the perspective. Anyway, it's just a much more complicated discussion than what he's talking about. And he's just being flip. Like I said, he's a comedian. I run into this all the time. I'm like, if I start hearing that kind of thing, I'm not laughing anymore because I'm processing it as an actual intellectual argument. And I'm like, there's a lot to talk about there.
Well,
it's a fascinating discussion. It's not that funny.
I think it is helpful because I would venture to guess that, like, I don't know, 98% of the people walking around anywhere in this country don't think about those things.
Right.
And I think he, at the very least, he's using comedy to try to get people to think about these things. Like, look, think about this, And if you come away and say, he's completely wrong, at least you've thought about it a little bit more than you probably did 5 minutes ago. And I mean, he's got a lot of great points in that. He becomes very political and socially and culturally. He is, observing and.
Well, is he a cultural commentator of sorts?
Commentating,
is a voice, a cultural voice. That's what I was saying. When we lose someone like this, even if I don't agree with him, it's a loss because you want articulate, free-thinking people out there. I've been thinking about this recently. I think that a lot of, and this is just kind of a hypothesis I'm working on, up until the 70s, right? We had a certain zeitgeist in the country. And it seems like we're kind of getting a lot of that zeitgeist back today. And I was thinking about it the other day. I was thinking it might be because of the AIDS epidemic. It might be because we lost the voices of a generation of gay men. And it just skewed the country towards Ronald Reagan and Rambo for like 20 years. And now as that swath of the population starts to replenish itself, we're getting a different voice. Yeah. Because like we talked about before in Blazing Saddles, gay people, especially traditionally, have like a big cultural voice, very powerful cultural voice. And I think to some extent it was missing. Like we lost like a generation there from really 1979. And, guys like Freddie Mercury didn't live to be in their 40s and 50s and commenting on things.
Fantastic observation. I never really thought of that. That's a fantastic observation. I would say I think there is a bit of a cycle though that there are
that too.
There are cultural movements and then you have reactions to those movements. And so I think the 80s and Rambo and Ronald Reagan was a cultural reaction to the free love and then the disco and the success of the 70s. So
I think there's definitely a part of that too.
And I think that and the 70s and 60s were a reaction to like Eisenhower and Nixon, and this whole, so I mean,
but also a reaction to Vietnam.
Right.
Vietnam went badly and it created a crisis of faith for America. And I think that the combination of the two, the Iraq and Afghanistan deployments, whatever you want to call them, and the financial crisis of 2008 has created a crisis of faith that we're dealing with today. Lesser degree. I don't think the country's been shaken to its foundation the way it was then.
And this is what I tell people about, like, and we've talked about this before, like critical race theory, for example. I am steeped in it because of where I work. And people, I hear people, my mom's very traditional or very old school, and she's conservative, all this other crap. And she's all clutching her pearls about it. And I keep telling her, Mom, it's just a phase. It's a theory and it's a phase. And in my short time in academia, it's only been like 15 years, but I've seen like 3 or 4 movements like take hold and then they move on to the next thing.
It's just sort of the natural cycle of things to go through.
Things and they'll move on. They'll move on to something else within the next few years. So just
with this critical race theory thing, I'm only hearing that phrase and only hearing about that from people that I consider to be at least sort of on the right side of things. Okay. I'm not encountering this phenomenon in my real life. I don't know whether this is a real phenomenon. And this is part of what I'm getting to. Like I live so far out here now.
Mhm.
Like we're out here in New Mexico. Like I really feel kind of disconnected. I'm like reading about what's happening on the coasts now.
Mhm.
And I'm getting less, and I'm almost like people could tell me anything. And if I didn't know any better, I would just believe it. If they told me, I read this article the other day that a conservative person I know posted that was saying that all the private schools in New York are filled with critical race theory and all the parents are too scared to talk about it. And I read it and I was like, oh man, that's like pretty upsetting. And I was like, well, wait a minute, is that even true? How I don't have any context to judge whether this is really happening. Now, I did see. I went to sign up my daughter. I went to sign up my daughter for acting camp back east in Virginia over the summer this year, and they asked what her pronouns were, and I was like, she's 5, and that's the first time I've actually seen concrete evidence that like people are doing things differently.
Right.
That there's things going on where I'm like, I'm really old. Like my first response was like, what are you even talking about? She's 5 years old. How is a kid who's 5? The only way a kid who's 5 is having a crisis about that kind of thing is because somebody filled their head with ideas about having a crisis about that.
At 5, at 5, her pronoun would be Shrek or Peter Pan or whatever character she wants to
or
be.
What's a pronoun? Or what does the word pronoun mean? I don't even understand the concept of gender.
Yeah, if you ask my 5-year-old, if you ask Jaron, who what he wanted to be called at 5, he would have wanted to be called Lightning McQueen. Call me Lightning McQueen.
I went through a phase of signing all my papers in 4th grade as Optimus Prime.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
heavy.
I don't know that my consciousness was terribly. I was identifying as a Cybertronian American at the time.
I think Carlin would have had a problem.
Which is honestly, I am being flip, and I don't mean to make fun of all of that in general. For adults, I think it's a serious issue. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the idea that children should be dealing with it. It's just kind of, it doesn't compute for me. I mean, I may just be an old guy, and maybe things are just going to completely go that way, but I don't know. To me, that seemed a little ridiculous, to be honest.
That is a bit young, but I think Carlin would be upset at any movement, regardless of what the movement was. I think he was an anti-establishment. So what's interesting about it is critical race theory has become the establishment, right? I mean, Black Lives Matter has become the establishment. It's very weird if you think about it, right? When you have a company that's supported by Nike and all these other, or not company,
it's tricky.
Supported by all these multi-million-dollar companies, billion-dollar national corporations, or funneling money to them, you can't say that that's not now the establishment.
So, it's interesting. It's interesting because I think that there's not a lot of actual concrete political power there. I think that most people who espouse those movements would say that a lot of hard political power is still being held by people of a different perspective, i.e., people in the Senate, the military, the president, that a lot of these really important, but I mean, it's undeniable that places like Amazon and Nike have power.
Yeah.
Even like the NBA has power, I mean, so I don't know. That's an interesting question. Who has the power in that situation? Because I have a feeling that people on the left would feel like that's not the case. They'd say, no, we're out of power. We're the people's movement. Whereas I think a lot of
of course they would. But
I think you've got both sides.
That's what they're founded on, though. But
I think both sides would say that. I think both sides of that debate would say, no, you're the one in power who's telling me what to do.
Right.
And it's really, it's paradoxical. It's actually from the outside, as a person who literally sits on the middle of the fence and like comments on both sides. It's very strange. I know for a fact those of us in the middle are not in power. Although the president I consider to be a middle of the road figure. I think Joe Biden is a pretty middle of the road figure. I don't see him as being particularly leftist or particularly, obviously he's not conservative. I mean, he's a Democrat. He's definitely not conservative, but like he reminds me of the way Clinton's used to be, which was like, technically Democrats, but not exactly revolutionaries. I don't really see him doing anything that particularly, which is, by the way, a welcome change. I'm really glad not to hear anything about the president. I don't see any tweets from him. I don't hear about anything he said or did. It's just, oh, there's a president. I can ignore that. I can ignore the fact that there's a president, and that feels good. That is a breath of fresh air for me.
Yeah, I do enjoy that. Well, so I guess what's your biggest surprise from this?
What is my biggest surprise? I hadn't really thought of it in that context. One of the things, so on the FMAM album this is,
Mhm.
there's a bit where he starts talking about pharmaceutical companies
Mhm.
and like advertising of pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. And I'm like, is this from 1972? This is way ahead of the game.
Naming birth control. Naming birth control, is that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought the exact same thing. Oh wow,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because he's talking about that stuff. And I don't remember what year it was, but I believe there was a Supreme Court case that allowed pharmaceuticals to start advertising on TV when I was in my 20s, early 20s, I think.
Okay.
And all of a sudden you're like Levitra and like, Zunestra and like whatever the heck all this stuff is. And they're directly marketing to consumers.
Yeah.
Which is like it on the one hand, as a person who believes in democratization, that's kind of interesting. You market directly to the person who's going to consume the drug. Fair.
Sure.
A lot of people would feel like a doctor who actually knows a damn thing about drugs should be an intermediary in that conversation.
Sure. Right.
But I can kind of go either way on that. But it became like a huge phenomenon in the 90s that like drugs were directly marketed to the people, and they became like these big drug companies and stuff, these big pharma companies. Yeah. And he's talking about that 30 years before it's an issue. And I thought that was really
okay. Not only that, but he was talking about specifically birth control being marketed to people, right? 1972, if a woman wanted birth control, she had to go to a doctor to ask permission to get birth control.
And in many cases had to lie about why.
Right. She had to get a prescription for birth control. And then she would take and he talks about this. This is exactly what he talks about. She would take the permission note to the pharmacist, and some old guy, right, who's standing behind the counter. He intimates that the guy is masturbating to this woman's prescription for birth control, and get it from some old guy smoking a cigarette. And obviously it's completely asinine, because he's saying she should have complete control over what she does. It's nobody's business, right? And that was birth control. But now, I mean, he was way ahead of the curve, because now birth control has become, because it was so taboo then. I mean, this is back when like the Catholic Church, and maybe they still do, I don't know, but I think the Catholic Church at one time said that was a sin. To take birth control was a sin. You're like killing babies. They likened it to actual abortion, right? And so you're not supposed to do that in 1972. And he's like, maybe one day these will become so popular that we'll have to have marketers, and they'll come up and he starts riffing on all these great names. I can't remember any of them, but they're all.
Yeah, you want me to say something, a belief I have, probably sounds pretty controversial, is if you are advocating to people in the developing world that they not use birth control, that someone in like, I can't even think of a good example. Actually, Catholic countries aren't quite as poor today as they once were, but when we were, 70s and 80s, if you're advocating to someone in the developing world that they not practice birth control and that they have 10 kids, you're a murderer. Mm-hmm. You're causing death and devastation on a scale, for no reason that you're culpable for doing that. I don't see how you could consider yourself a good person if you're saying that to people.
Right. Well, I
see
agree.
Those pictures of like children in the developing world covered in flies and stuff, and it's because you're telling them to have a giant family. Like you're culpable for doing that.
I don't know if it was all the children. I think it was just the children in those commercials.
Yeah, right. But actually, as I recall, might have been Ethiopia, right? Wasn't it? Those ones with the...
in our day in the 80s, it was always Ethiopia. Yeah, because they had.
When I was in the Middle East, I stayed with Bedouins, and they had a family. They had family members that lived on like they didn't call it that, but it was a reservation, right? It was where they'd moved everybody out of the national park and stuck them in a reservation, the Bedouins that had been there. Mm-hmm. And then these concrete block buildings they all lived in. And we went and saw their family, like just to visit them. And the kids were literally covered in flies. And the dad had 10, 12, 13 children apiece and no way to feed them and stuff like that. And I was just like, this is the worst poverty I've ever seen in my entire life. Yeah. Literally flies landing on people. Like it was pretty bad. Not that has anything to do with Catholics. That's more like a different religion telling you shouldn't. Although, you know what? I don't think it's the religion. I don't think that was religious. I'm going to walk that back. I believe that was just a deeply felt cultural belief about having giant families.
I think that was more of a cultural thing. Like the more kids you have, the more help you have.
I actually don't know where Islam,
whatever it happens to be, but
I don't know where Islam stands on birth control. I'm not going to opine about that because I don't know the answer.
So Carlin was talking about, strictly the U.S. culture. He was like 30 years ahead of the curve on that one, for
Yeah,
sure.
totally. That's a pretty big surprise to me. I thought that was pretty prescient.
Yeah.
I was impressed. So
Mine was just the revelation rather, that this was his transitionary album, if you will, going from
Yeah.
straight lace to counterculture, and
Sure.
becoming slowly making that kind of arc and change into the George Carlin that I knew from the 90s and 2000. And before this, that he could be a stand-in for Johnny Carson, clean cut, parted hair,
Mhm.
no beard, narrow tie, all that stuff in the 60s. Yeah, so that was probably the biggest surprise, was to see this kind of evolution of George Carlin, and be able to see it with these two albums, I think.
I think so. He had a bit in the second album that really got me, because he was talking about having people in your address book that die.
I like that. Yeah, that was cool.
And I was like, oh my God, my cell phone. And
Yeah.
again, this is a revelation about how old I am. My cell phone is getting to be filled with dead people. Like I'm looking in. I looked at one time, I had 4 contacts in a row who were dead in my cell phone.
But you got
like alphabetically.
You got to tell people the bit, so you can't just do that.
Oh yeah, he's just talking about how when someone dies, they get 6 weeks, and then you sort of throw away their address book, just so you cross
out their name. Cross out their name.
Right. Right. And then you delete them. Then you delete them from your PDA or whatever he was talking about, 2008.
Right.
And you hear that sound.
Yeah. Right. Or if you feel bad about it, then you can just keep them in your trash can for a few weeks, and then trash, something like that.
Then clear out the trash after 6 weeks. Yeah, it's pretty solid.
But he talked about how empowering it was, right? Like how much power it fills you with. It fills you with all this power to be able to cross out somebody's name after they've died. Or
maybe when I'm in my 70s, there'll be a sense of accomplishment of outliving people. Maybe that. Right now, it's always just like tragic when someone dies. It's like you're not supposed to be dead. We're like 40. Like you're supposed to still be alive.
With a trajectory that aging is going on for us, we shouldn't die until the early 80s, I think. So.
Oh, you mean okay.
Yeah. So because right now
I am.
I'm just 24. So.
I'm hoping I get 27 more years. Anything after that is a bonus.
Okay.
Is what I'm figuring. So I'm trying to enjoy my life based on that being the expiration date. Anything after that, fine, cool. Spend more time with my grandchildren or whatever it is.
Right.
That's great. Like,
that's
I don't know
for you. Well, so what do you think? Are we toasting this classic?
So it comes down to me, right? Because like we said, that the
non-choosing,
you foisted it on me. Yeah. So let's see. I didn't love it. I do like George Carlin. I have liked some of his stuff in general.
Mm-hmm.
I would not give this album to a friend and be like, oh my God, you got to listen to this.
Yeah.
So maybe that should be my deciding factor. I mean, I just, there's just that bit with the DJ goes on for 5 or 6 minutes. There's another bit, the hippy dippy reporter, which the gag is that the reporter talks like a hippie.
Right.
Oh, it just goes on for a long time.
Sure.
Honestly, I found the second album, which is definitely not a classic. I don't even think we're voting on that. It's just an album.
Right.
I wouldn't say so. I don't think I'm toasting it. As much as I'm inclined while drinking Miller High Life to toast everything and every facet of the human experience, just out of sheer, joie de vivre and happiness, I just don't know if I can do it.
Joie de vivre. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I am going to agree with you. This is an agreement with not toasting this classic.
All right. Again, this happened last time. I feel bad.
No. No reason
I feel
to feel
dirty,
bad.
not toasting, but I just, it just wasn't that great.
Reason to. I mean, I love George Carlin. I'm with you. But if we're looking at this as a standalone classic, right?
Right. Standalone.
I think that's a good yardstick. Like, would I give this to a friend and say, "Man, you got to listen to this"? I wouldn't do that with this one.
Or even just make it part of somebody's education. Would I make this part? If I was trying to
if you wanted to get a feel for George Carlin then versus now, but why would you do that, right? Unless you were studying stand-up comedy or something. But I mean,
right.
And for that case, it's really cool. It's an interesting, different perspective, but it's kind of like watching a silent movie, okay. Yeah. Unless we're talking about, some of the really old, Frankenstein's monster, some of those really old,
Right.
old silent movies. But so I'm with you. I think I would. We're not looking at it that way, but I would be more inclined to look at the later album and say, go watch this album because that's
Yeah.
that's the
It
one.
was better. I thought it was better. If this had been the album that has the 7 words you can't say on television,
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
probably would have toasted that.
and that came
Because
later.
that's later. That's a classic bit. That's
Yeah.
an influential bit. That is a bit that is so influential. There's a Supreme Court case about that bit.
Based on it. Yeah.
So, I mean, that would be more likely to get my toast.
Right.
So some of George Carlin's material, sort of like we did with Mel Brooks, we sort of were toasting early Mel Brooks and Mel Brooks in general. And I would toast George Carlin in that sense. This particular album didn't do it for me.
Same here.
So
all right,
maybe I'm kind of leaning towards toasting George Carlin, but not necessarily.
I would toast
this particular.
I would
material.
toast George Carlin, not this particular album, and I encourage everybody to go listen to some of his later stuff. For sure, it's fun. It's still funny stuff, and he's irreverent and has some great insight into various things. But let's. What are we doing? What are we talking about next, Mister?
Our next thing is going to be a book. It was my choice for a book. I've been thinking we should do some science fiction, so I went with The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is a book I've read several times.
Fiction. I'm so surprised. Science fiction. Wow, really?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's not really like a huge thing of mine, but I thought it'd be fun to do some classic sci-fi. So,
fun, yeah.
And it's a funny one. It's a funny one. It's good. Anybody that's listening can go grab the book and read it in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's it's a breezy read. And that's what we're going to be doing next time. It's going to be difficult for me to tell everybody about the drink because it's going to be my own concoction.
Okay.
But we will try to get. I will try to get something into the outro to help people prepare for the drink.
Very good.
So I think that's it. I think that's it for Toasting the Classics for today. I'm going to clink together my empties as my toast, George Carlin. Or I've got an empty bottle of Miller High Life and a full one, so it'll make kind of a sound.
All right. There you go. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you, Dave, for putting up with my grading.
Right.
I'll go flunk some people now.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody, and
peace out.
All right. See you next time.
That's it for episode 9 of Toasting the Classics. For those playing along at home, next week is going to be tricky. We read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and of course, we took a shot at creating the Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster with local-sourced earthly ingredients. My recipe calls for, I'll wait while you write this down, 1 shot vodka, 1 shot Pernod, 1 shot of Southern Comfort, 1 shot of creme de menthe, a dash of lime juice, and a top-up of lemonade. Phew! Do your best, or just look up one of the many recipes available online. If you'd like to get in touch, email us at toastingtheclassics@gmail.com. Send us show or drink ideas, comments, complaints, whatever. Check out my blog at theattractivenuisance.com and follow us on Twitter at @ractivenuisance. Our music was written by Michelle McArthur. See you next time on Toasting the Classics.